Welcome to Best Picture This, where it is always Oscar season. I'm Mike.
And I'm Brian. In this show, we reevaluate every Best Picture nominee from the 21st century and decide whether to keep it or kick it from its Oscar pedestal.
Oscar pedestal? Don't you mean Oscar pedestal? I think you did, Brian, because today we're trying something a little different. In 2004, the nominees for Best Picture were Ray, Sideways, Finding Neverland, The Aviator, and Million Dollar Baby, but there were also a lot of interesting horror movies released this year. And it's October, so what better excuse to talk about them instead of some stuffy old Oscar nominations? So
we might even talk about one that wasn't really horror, but more like suspense thriller.
I don't like your tone. Out with the Best Picture nominees. In with a 3-movie episode where we'll try to fit in talks about Open Water, Saw, and The Village, all in less than 60 minutes, Brian.
I think we'll be able to do it.
You think so? High hopes?
Yes. So just a quick review of some of these budgets, the box office results, and some of the how they were critically acclaimed or not so.
Okay.
So first off, let's talk about Open Water. Open Water won a Saturn Award for Best Actress, Blanchard Ryan. Now, I don't really follow the Saturn Awards that closely, but Blanchard Ryan won over Kate Winslet in Eternal Sunshine and over Nicole Kidman in Birth.
Wow.
Both of which I thought were great performances, but enough people thought Blanchard Ryan was good. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And it also was nominated for Best Horror Film. Saw was also nominated.
Also the smallest budget of the three, right?
Yes. It was
tiny.
It was 120,000-500,000. So I'm not sure where that comes in. We talked about this at Blair Witch Project, that they added a bunch of production after they thought it might sell something.
Or maybe that was marketing dollars.
Yeah.
From 200 to 500. Either
Probably
way,
so.
If you're making a movie for half of $1 million,
Yep.
that's still a pretty big deal, especially compared to some of these later ones we'll talk about, like The Village.
Yeah, and Open Water, the box office was $55 million. So almost all that, $55 million of it was pure profit.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So a brief overview of Saw. It won the Best Horror Movie of the Year for the Golden Schmoes Awards. Are you familiar with Golden Schmoes?
I don't follow.
You also follow them? You have alerts
no.
on Twitter about their... it also won the Favorite Movie Poster of the Year, which is a joke because they cut off the wrong limb in the movie poster. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
It also won the Golden Schmo for Most Memorable Scene in a Movie. This scene was called, quote, The Ending, unquote.
Okay.
Saw was made for $1.2 million. Also, quite small budget, and it also looks pretty darn good for $1.2 million, in my opinion. The box office was 103.9, so made a whole lot of money.
Huge.
And then launched, of course, other movies. The Village was nominated for an Oscar, Best Original Score, James Newton Howard. And in the Empire Awards, Bryce Dallas Howard was nominated for Best Actress and for Best Newcomer. She was mentioned in quite a few awards. M. Night Shyamalan directed the movie, and he was nominated for Best Director in the Empire Awards. However, Fangoria Chainsaw Awards named this the worst film of the year.
Oh, come on. Come on. That's just ridiculous.
Bryce Dallas Howard was nominated for Best Actress in the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. And the budget was $60 million, and it made in the box office $256. So that's
still a win.
So this is probably 2.5 times better than Saw, and five times better than Open Water.
I think that we'll get into that when we rank these three at the end of the episode and kind of take a look back. But I mean, $60 million budget that's a big budget movie by any scale.
For 2004, yeah. And
especially comparing it to a potentially, $200,000 budget for Open Water and one for Saw. That's kind of a...
You look at though, the acting. M. Night Shyamalan, of course, was he was also in it because he's in all of his movies. But Bryce Dallas Howard was new. But Joaquin Phoenix, Adrian Brody, Sigourney Weaver, and then William Hurt, Brendan Gleeson. The cinematography,
amazing.
Roger Deakins.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you can tell the money that went into it because of of how it looks and these kind of names.
And to call any movie that he is the cinematographer for the worst of the year, what is it? The Chainsaw Awards or whatever you said?
Fangoria.
Throw them in the trash. Fangoria, you're wrong.
Coming up in the show, we'll ask each other one question designed to saw off any chance you had of not being enlightened today. Does that one work?
It's close enough.
I don't know. We'll also give a golden take, and that's it. We're just doing questions and golden takes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll do the big reveal. How do you rank these? And do they have a chance of making your top 5? So, open water.
And before we get into that, let me just say 2 things. One, there will be spoilers. Lots of spoilers. We're talking about 3 movies here, so if you haven't seen any of these, they are 17 years old.
If you don't know who died in each movie, then you should, and you don't want to have it spoiled, you got to stop, because we might mention someone who died.
Yes. And the other horror movies that came out this year, Shaun of the Dead, we talked about last week, but also Dawn of the Dead, the remake. You have The Grudge, A Tale of Two Sisters in South Korea. Like, this was a pretty big lot of horror movies for 1 year, especially after the past couple where we hadn't seen many. But open water. So IMDb plot synopsis says, based on a true story of 2 scuba divers accidentally stranded in shark-infested waters after their tour boat has left. Directed by Chris Kentis, and Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 75%. So my question to you, Brian, in his review, Roger Ebert wrote, "Rarely but sometimes a movie can have an actual physical effect on you. It gets under your defenses and sidesteps the 'it's only a movie' reflex and creates a visceral feeling that might as well be real. Open Water had that effect on me." David Edelstein of Slate said, "I'm sorry, but that's entertainment?" Which camp did you fall into?
Absolutely, Roger Ebert. I was like, I mentioned this to you off, after the last episode, not on the air, but that I felt this kind of physical relief at one point when, the sharks are coming and they kind of like go back to on the island to see how people are finally waking up to the fact that they were left. And I felt like, okay, finally I can take a breather here because what's coming.
Yes.
There's no surprises in this movie, really.
There's no surprises.
Maybe you think that they might get away with only like a limb or 2 missing, but you know that this is leading toward disaster. I mean, it's a horror movie.
Yeah.
So
the dread just builds.
Yeah,
it
does.
Builds and builds.
Absolutely. So yeah, I definitely think Ebert is correct in this matter.
Yeah. This movie I saw probably right when it came out on DVD, and it's been terrorizing me since. And I feel like I have just this primal fear of water in general. Sharks are terrifying on their own. Being stranded somewhere is scary. You combine all those things together, but then also I like how the relationship sort of devolves as this goes on. At first it's kind of like the boat's going to come back, and then we'll just hang out together until it does, and then they start blaming each other, and I thought all that stuff was very real.
I did too.
Also, the camera work sometimes in this could be a little bit dicey, but one of the things I love is you can't really do all that much when you're in water. It's either you're bobbing with the characters or maybe in a boat watching them.
Maybe a little bit of water splashing up on the lens.
Yes.
Every now and then.
But that's what I'm going to bring up here is every now and then we'll have this shot where the camera's right at water level and we'll kind of see underwater for a second before we go back over. And there's a shot where you see just a swarm of sharks circling them, and it's just for a second.
Yeah, a split second. It's so brief, and you get the feeling like this is partly how they kept it low budget because they really hardly had any sharks in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you see some coming up and you're like, did they even get that? Is that like stock footage they got? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I did see an interview with the 2 actors and they talked about being surrounded by sharks.
Oh, yeah.
There really were sharks.
It's real sharks.
Yeah.
And I mean, with this kind of movie, there's no CGI sharks.
Those sharks are more real than the Jaws shark.
That's totally true. I think he had a name. I'm not Bruce, maybe?
I don't know. Was it Bruce? Is that why they named him Bruce in Finding Nemo?
Maybe.
Interesting.
Your question.
My question is this the next generation's Jaws? Or was it, because it's not really, right? Why didn't it like catch on like Jaws?
I don't know. I mean, people do like shark movies. It seems like one pops up every now and then. The Meg, I don't know if you
I never saw that, but
I didn't see that. But that's another CGI shark movie. There's a movie with Blake Lively, I think The Shallows it might be called.
I never saw that one either.
CGI shark movie. Jaws, not a CGI shark. This, not a CGI shark. I think that we're learning here that people like movies that have real sharks or physical effect sharks.
I think we do not have nearly enough data to draw that conclusion.
No, I think we have 4 movies, and 2 are good and 2 are bad.
But I thought maybe because there's no citywide scare, like, I don't know if it didn't feel like important enough. Like this is like a city, a societal issue. No big close-ups of a really scary shark.
No, and I love that about it. So are you saying that you wanted to see a shark trend happen here?
No, I didn't. But when I saw in a review, this is the next generation's Jaws.
Because it's a scary shark.
I guess.
I guess.
But for some reason, it didn't really, like, I hadn't really even heard of this until we started looking back at 2004. And it had a big impact on me when I watched it. So I don't know. It's just interesting. What failed in this that Jaws succeeded in?
I would say that this movie is, yeah. I mean, come on.
Spielberg. The name Spielberg did it?
Well, it's funny. They're both about scary sharks. But this one, I would say, is almost a harder watch because the whole time you're waiting for the shoe to drop. It's tense. It's full of dread.
There's nothing to look at besides these 2 people suffering and waiting to die.
But even though that's true, and the visceral experience of this maybe is more heightened than Jaws, I've never been in a swimming pool and thought the sharks from open water are going to get me. Yeah. But I have had times where all of a sudden in your mind, you're like, I got to get out of this pool because the Jaws shark is doing the da-dums. He's coming.
I don't know why you would be scared of Jaws in a pool.
You have never been scared of a shark in a pool
Not
before?
in a pool, no.
Were you never a child?
I never was. I basically was born an adult.
All right. Well,
what's your golden take, Mike?
My golden take is that we mentioned the camera work being a little iffy sometimes.
It was horrible at the beginning.
It's pretty bad. And I will say that this movie wouldn't be what it is. It wouldn't be as powerful as it is if there was more money behind it. I think that's the first 15 minutes or so of this movie. You're thinking, oh boy, this is kind of rough. Mm-hmm. But that sensation, it makes you feel like you're watching some couple's home movies. And there are no CGI sharks in home movies. So when they get out into the water, like I said, there's not a whole lot of choices the director could be making there. So that levels out. You forget about the close-ups on light switches and, the questionable angles in that first 15 minutes. And you're just there existing in the water. But I think that the feeling that we got from those 15 minutes where it's established that this is so low budget that it has to be real, I think that makes it more scary.
I think it felt like the director was just playing around. It was almost like a class assignment. Get a close-up of a random object in the house and then get a strange angle. And they really did nothing for the storytelling. But I see what you're saying about creating the effect.
And mind you, I'm not saying that it's intentional. I'm not saying that the directors were, let's get the light switch because it will feel amateurish. So then when they see the real sharks, they'll be shocked. I just think that it's almost like the luck factor of movies sometimes. That's how it worked out. And I think that effect is the ultimate truth of this movie. Your golden take.
Bill Clark from The Balcony in 2005, he wrote, "Open water depends on the audience to be able to vicariously place themselves in the situation at hand." Mm-hmm. And I think my golden take is that is exactly why the movie worked so well. I think the low budget shots sort of helped with that. Mm-hmm. That it felt even more real. And the whole time I kept thinking, what if I was out there? What would you do? You really have no choices. And this is also the same is true basically of Saw in the next movie that we'll talk about.
My follow-up question is, why does anybody go in the ocean? Why?
The bobbing is nice.
Oh, it's full of monsters.
I'm more interested in sitting on the shore and looking at the waves by far.
Yeah. I mean, it can kill you in 100 different ways.
Which is strange because we're sort of so adventurous in most ways.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Me and you? Oh, yeah.
The second movie, here's my question to you.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah. You got to set it up.
Plot synopsis here. People don't have any idea what Saw is about, and I'm about to tell them. IMDb says, 2 strangers awaken in a room with no recollection of how they got there and soon discover they're pawns in a deadly game perpetrated by a notorious serial killer.
But they do remember why they were there, both of them. So
not at the beginning. This is a setup.
That's the premise.
Yes, that's the
my question to you is, when you first saw the movie, mm-hmm. what did you think about the dead person in the middle of the floor? Did you think that was sort of the key to the story?
No.
Or I didn't either. It totally fooled me. I kind of forgot he was there until at the very end.
Which you're supposed to.
Yeah, I know. It worked really well.
It worked like a charm, I guess.
Second question, since that one was pretty much a dud. Is Cary Elwes bad at an American accent, or is he really good at a British accent? What is he? Is he British, American?
I don't know. I have some problems with both performances.
The accent was quite bad in some situations. And yeah, the other actor, I forget what his name is, Lee something.
Yeah. They're both kind of irritating, right?
Yeah, neither one is very good, which is, but the other guy, I forget what his name is, I'm sorry. I'll have to look it up while you're talking, so I have to listen. But he wrote the screenplay, helped write the screenplay, so.
Oh, okay.
That might be why he's starring role.
That's a good piece of trivia.
That's probably the only way that I'll be an action star as well if I write the script.
Yeah. Would you be shirtless, you think, in your entire
probably
film?
Not.
And little Rambo just put a bandana on, no shirt. Anyway, my question to you. So this movie, obviously, is beloved. It spawned 8 sequels. One of them pitched by and starring Chris Rock, which is
Spiral,
which is great.
The new one, right?
Spiral from the Book of Saw.
Lee Whannell is
that's the actor's name.
Actor. Directed by James Wan. Go ahead.
So all of the hype and history around Saw, but isn't this just Escape Room, the movie?
I was going to say it felt just like an escape room. I've never been to an escape room, but this is what I imagine.
Did this inspire
look for the trick? I don't know.
Escape rooms?
I don't know.
I guess I should have looked that up ahead of time. I wanted to just pose
you
this
thought
to
I
you.
would know the answer, didn't you?
So were you wrapped up in the sort of in the puzzleness of it? Are you a clue?
No.
You like clues?
Honestly, I mean, it's kind of clever, like the clues and stuff, but I felt like the first half of the movie, it did not really grab me that much because I felt like it was very contrived. I mean, that's the whole point, is that it's contrived. It's a serial killer making this game. But it felt like another layer of that to where, let's make a movie about a serial killer. That's what it kind of felt like, and not really like, I don't know. Do serial killers really exist in real life?
Do serial killers exist?
That do this kind of thing?
Oh.
You know?
No, but I mean, come on.
I don't know.
This is like the Lord of the Rings argument all over again. Why don't they just get the eagle to drop the ring into
Well, that's a good question.
It's a terrible question.
No, but it felt like I don't know.
He was giving them riddles, and they're supposed to figure out that there's poison in the blood, and that there's a saw in the toilet tank,
but not in the poop.
Not in the and
in the
who would reach down the drain first? That should have been my question. There's a heart on the toilet tank, and he reaches straight into the bowl.
He wrote that into the script.
Then he even says afterwards, like, "Guess I should have checked in the tank first."
That was funny though.
I'm not into the puzzleness either.
Yeah.
I'm not engaged by clues, and I just kind of want to, before we move through into Golden Takes here, I want to just talk about Saw, because people do love this movie, and I was really excited to rewatch it because I didn't really love it.
I had never seen it. I was wondering that. When did you see it?
I saw it in theater.
Yeah, okay.
And I did remember the scene where the guy's in his apartment and he's flashing his camera, and that's the only light that we see.
The Jimmy Stewart moment.
The rear window camera as a weapon kind of thing. And the sound the camera makes, kind of a hissing sound, and it's a cool tension building horror moment that I liked a lot. But I thought, it's been a while. Maybe I didn't really get it this time around, though. I never really felt scared. I thought that James Wan's style was a little bit showy in a way that's different from his horror now, that sometimes is very, very showy. But this, you have like a lot of fast motion sometimes. There's like metal music playing. And I also got the sense of him kind of just throwing horror things at the wall to see what will stick. Like, let's talk about the scary doll for a second.
Yeah.
Why does the scary doll exist?
I don't know. Was that, and how did it work?
And how is he riding a tricycle?
Jigsaw, the serial killer, is somehow controlling all these puppets, and how, like, is it animatronics?
And I am not someone to get caught up on logistics like this.
I
feel you are. I am not. I feel like if the mood of a horror movie is working, then that's the logic that I care about, and I'll follow that thread. I'll ride that wave. But in this, his whole motivation, right, is I want to try to make these people appreciate being alive. They've taken it for granted for too long. I'm teaching them a lesson.
That's okay. It's fine. But it's not great. It's fine.
I don't buy it.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Yeah.
But why do I need to try to scare them with dolls if I'm trying to just reinforce this message that that they're going to get if they survive the room? You know, if he cuts his leg off, he's gonna appreciate being alive. If the woman takes that jaw contraption off, she's gonna appreciate being alive. Why do we have to make her afraid with a scary doll?
So this was another theory.
I just didn't really understand the purpose or how it worked, and it was just distracting to me.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't my golden take. So I'm going to say, as a theory, why horror movies work is invincibility. The bad guy is supposed to seem invincible to the point where it's impossible we're going to defeat this. If you don't ever get to that moment in the horror movie, then I don't think the horror really works.
I think you're talking about slasher movies specifically.
Well, even in this, the sharks are invincible. You cannot defeat the sharks.
That's true about sharks.
You cannot defeat this. You cannot get out of this jigsaw puzzle because he is so...
If you don't understand it, I guess.
Yeah. But
you have to understand it in order to beat it. But I mean...
In a thriller, you're going to figure out the bad guy and defeat him. In a horror movie, you're not going to figure out the bad guy. He's going to get away. Remember, this is my rule of horror movies.
I think the rule is wrong.
It's correct.
But this kind of is a thriller. And that's maybe why it doesn't work totally for me, because it has the procedural element of a cop drama, which... Also, not really my favorite. We're following clues of the people in the room are following clues, and then the cops are following clues. So there's a lot of clues going on in this movie, and we're supposed to be following this mystery.
Also, Danny Glover, there's a cool twist. The last half has several interesting good twists, and that kind of saved the movie for me, really, because the first half I was kind of like, I could take it or leave it. But the last half does have some good twists, including a really cool twist that, Danny Glover is actually off the police force, and maybe he's somehow behind all this. And then like 2 seconds later, you realize, actually, no, he's not behind all this. So that felt like another one you said, let's throw these things against the wall and see what happens.
Let's throw it at the wall. And then if we're talking twists, let's talk about the final twist where you find out who the killer is. Yep. The dead body that's in the middle of the room gets up. You realize it's him.
I like it.
All right.
But you don't?
It works as a twist.
Yes.
You're surprised and you go, oh, mind blown. He says game over, credits roll. Because he saw it all.
He wanted to see.
The double meaning.
I like that.
But he was like unconscious the whole time, right?
That's what you thought.
But I think that didn't they say that he's given people before, some of his victims, this medication that makes them seem like they're dead, like the guy who was passed out.
I didn't get the sense that I thought that he was probably just playing dead
for hours in the room. So what's the point?
That is a lot of hours.
I don't understand what is gained by him being
quite risky as well.
It's risky. He doesn't gain anything. He's watched from other rooms before, and now he's going to watch but act like he's asleep the whole time, but he's not making any decisions. So him being there or being outside of the room makes no difference whatsoever. Yeah. So the twist is only here for us to go, oh my God, I didn't see that coming.
Also, if he saw his other crimes being happening, he did it from a safe distance. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like he was like there possibly to be killed by his... experiment. So,
yeah,
I don't know. It didn't, I think that there were a lot of unique or a lot of creative, attempts, but not great acting. A lot of the attempts didn't make a lot of sense. And bad accent by Carrie Ellis.
Throwing a lot against the wall, seeing what sticks. At the end of the day, I kind of feel like I appreciate what this movie did for horror, kind of making it more gritty and serious at the time. I like that it was made for $1 million. That's it. And then it spawned this big thing. I mean, it's again, kind of like 28 Days Later. It sort of reinforces this idea that horror movies can work on a very small budget and then inspire another wave of horror movies. But just as a visceral experience, I just don't feel like I get this movie.
So tell me this, though. Mm-hmm. I also feel that horror works best when there is something, it goes along with the invincibility idea. There's something sort of supernaturally bad. about the bad guy. And when it's a serial killer, you know that it's not really, the only thing that's, extraordinary about the person is that they're a psychopath. There's no, empathy. They're willing to do anything, whereas a normal human being in society won't. So that's sort of the closest thing they have to this kind of like supernatural ability. But I don't really know that, generally speaking, a serial killer movie feels like a natural fit for horror. It feels like
Psycho.
I don't even know if I would consider Psycho really horror in the same way that, I don't know. You're including The Village as horror, so I don't really get that.
The Village is horror.
But like even Silence of the Lambs, it's horror, I guess. But there's something like, what's the difference between that and like just a really scary crime thriller?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is one that sort of rides the line a little bit. I do think that it's a horror movie, but it has that extra sort of prestige.
So take Silence of the Lambs, and then you take this movie, both about serial killers.
Yeah.
Both of them in true horror movie fashion, as I said. The bad guy gets away in the end, which makes it a horror movie, I guess. But in the end, it's about a serial killer. So like, I don't know.
But even think about Blair Witch, if we're going to go deeper into horror.
That's supernatural. That feels more like horror to me.
Maybe it's a witch.
Yeah.
But you could just say, these are just some locals that live in the woods. Maybe it's like a Deliverance type situation. They're just messing with them. Or maybe it's all in their mind. We never see anything in that movie, except for the very last shot where we see somebody from the group standing in the corner, facing the wall, which is set up earlier. But other than that movie could kind of be about anything.
There's a lot of weird things that show up in the trees and around. So you feel like there's something supernatural.
A lot of times, too, horror movies can kind of just take place in somebody's mind. Something like The Innocents, even The Others. Maybe supernatural, but not necessarily.
Well, it's about ghosts. I mean, The Others, about, again, spoiler.
We're throwing a lot of spoilers out here. Yeah, I guess so. I think that horror more has to do with not being able to trust something, with living with in unnatural circumstances, the uncanny. And I think if the mood works, I'm willing to say that pretty much anything that is creepy is horror.
Anything creepy is horror.
Anything could be horror if it's creepy.
Did you already say your golden take?
I have not.
You better get on it.
All right. Horror launches careers. That's my golden take. Okay. There's a long history of this. Peter Jackson.
Like Cary Elwes.
No. I'm talking directors. Okay. Peter Jackson, Sam Raimi. He goes from Evil Dead to Spider-Man, on top of the world. But 2004 was a particularly huge year for this, with horror movies having the debut features for James Wan, who now has the Conjuring universe, has directed Fast and the Furious, Aquaman. He's a huge, huge deal. But also Zack Snyder, who I mentioned before with Dawn of the Dead. That was his first movie, written by James Gunn. And Zack Snyder is kind of like the godfather of the DC universe right now. And James Gunn was Guardians of the Galaxy guy. You see a lot of this. I mean, Edgar Wright is another example.
Chris Kentis.
I don't know if Chris Kentis...
He didn't. He made 2 other movies, disappeared. His Wikipedia entry is like 1 paragraph long. That's kind of maybe an outlier, but I'm using it as proof against your theory.
Well, I mean, you look at a lot of careers, and I think that they follow this trajectory where even Zack Snyder had only done music videos before he made Dawn of the Dead, and then he's in charge of the main competitor to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, that is a huge ascension, and it's very similar to James Wan, just like it was for those ones earlier, Peter Jackson, Sam Raimi, and all the John Carpenter, all these guys.
Despite Sam Raimi's missteps in Spider-Man.
Yeah, Sam Raimi's career is spotty, but his highs are high.
My golden take is that Saw is brilliant at telling you what's going to happen and still making it compelling. The key moment is Cary Elwes starts at the beginning and says, I know what's supposed to happen. He wants us to cut off our legs, or he wants me to cut off my leg. And the rest of the movie, an hour and a half later, he's cutting off his leg. Spoiler alert. Not his arm, as the movie poster would have us believe.
There must be different posters because
the one on IMDb is
the one on
somebody's
Letterboxd
arm.
is a leg.
Somebody's really weird looking leg looks like a hand to me. But fortunately, that moment of the leg actually coming off totally edited out on VidAngel because who needs to see that? But generally speaking,
I would say
I'm going to tell you what's about to happen, and then an hour and a half later, it's going to happen, and it's still compelling. There's something well done about that.
And in a lot of horror movies, I would say that same sense of inevitability is a key.
Yes, I agree.
Being set up early, knowing what to expect, or directors that are kind of postmodern play with the fact that they know what we do, what we expect from these types of films, and then subverting that. I think is another entryway in. The Village.
Movie number 3.
Members of a 19th century community fear the strange creatures that inhabit the surrounding forest, but are forced to venture outside their borders when a villager becomes fatally wounded. Director, M. Night Shyamalan.
M. Night Shyamalan.
All right, so this is the third movie, and here's my question to you. Right into it. I know you didn't see the twist coming, but how did it work for you? Right to the end.
Well, I believe after approximately 20 minutes... I sent you a message, Facebook message, saying, this is my prediction, just so it was on the record. Yeah. It was wrong.
It was so wrong.
It was wrong. But it would have been better. No. I mean, what is the twist? That it was Adrian Brody who was the bad guy? Who was the...
No. What?
What is the big twist?
There are like 3 twists in the movie.
Okay.
But the big ones are, 1, the creatures are not real.
Yes, and they knew that.
No, only the forefathers of the village knew. No one else knew it.
Right. They meaning some of those leader people.
Yes. And number 2, that this is not a period piece. That we're not in the 19th century. Yeah. That this is modern day, and these are isolationists. That they went into the woods to form this way of life.
I don't think that's a big... I mean, the fact that they're isolationists...
The entire movie long, we think that we're watching people in 1900.
But by the stilted... the overly stilted dialogue that it must be faked.
Oh, come on.
You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean.
It sounds like someone's trying to write what people talked about in the 1800s, not how they actually spoke.
Like every person who's ever written a script that takes place in the 1800s?
I think some people really know.
David Eggers, who did The Witch, he knew. He nailed it, but maybe everybody else has had problems.
So the fact that Adrian Brody was the bad guy in the costume,
that's like the third twist. Where now
that's the most compelling one by far to me.
Are you serious? Yeah. I think that's the worst one.
Well, that's why I think that it doesn't really succeed that well as a movie, because the other ones were worse than that one to me.
Wow. Okay, so walk me through it. What was your reaction when you see the suit of the creature?
First of all, the suit of the creature seemed extremely elaborately made to look like a horrific monster, and it made me wonder, like, it looked like a professional costume maker had made it.
Yeah.
It looked like a horror movie special effects guy had made it.
The character design is amazing.
I'm like, yes, amazing. It's so cool. But then I'm like, who made that? William Hurt? His character made that?
I don't know who made it. They all have jobs. Maybe one of them in the real world was a seamstress.
The costume was too amazingly cool for one of those like isolationist people to make.
Wow, this is just where we are going to veer off, because I could not care less about who made that suit.
It was a super cool suit. It was a letdown that it wasn't a supernatural being to me, honestly.
Really?
Like, yeah, it would have been cooler if it was a supernatural being. That's why my prediction that Joaquin Phoenix, it was all in his mind and he was the one who did it. He was like insane. That would have been a cooler twist. And more typical of M. Night Shyamalan too, which is why I thought I guessed it so correctly.
I don't know. I think that...
Why did Adrian Brody do that?
Adrian Brody's character is the worst in this movie. Well, it's questionable the whole way through. They set up this guy who's, got a mental disability, and then we can just kind of put anything on him. He does something out of the clear blue sky.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
The best moment of the movie to me was the murder scene.
It's shot very well.
Oh yes, Roger Deakins knocks it out of the park. throughout the movie. It's great cinematography.
Yeah, the look of this movie is beautiful from start to finish.
I'll be curious as we do our finale of 2004 if this feels like it should be nominated for Best Cinematography. I haven't looked at all the other ones, what it would be. But that murder scene where you get, closer and closer up on the two men, and then all of a sudden you look down and there's a knife in one of them. It's like, what? And then you realize Adrian Brody is even crazier than we thought. We already know he's crazy. But then he's locked up.
Well, we don't know that he's crazy. We think that he's
all fake.
No, that he's
he may have low
mentally
IQ.
challenged.
Yes, that could be. But so he's, first of all, you trust that person to be the frightful monster in the woods?
No, he was never the monster in the woods. He didn't even know about the monsters in the woods. He was put into that room as like a punishment, as a sort of prison after he killed Joaquin Phoenix, so they can figure out what to do with him. But they kept a suit underneath the floorboards, which is kind of a dumb little story hole.
And he broke out of...
and then he was ripped...
He
was losing it in there, and he ripped up some floorboards and found the suit and then put it on and went into the woods.
That is...
that is a not good twist.
Don't feel as supported all that clearly in the movie.
That's 100% what happens.
Unless I just... I'm a bad movie watcher. I didn't get that. But so you're saying who is supposed to be
the forefather
monster
guys?
They go and do it?
Yes.
Is that said in the movie somewhere?
Yeah.
I just missed that?
They have it in the shed that no one's allowed to go in.
Right.
They have several suits in there.
Here's the shed. Yeah, they say here's the shed.
Yes. And then when they go into that room and find that Adrian Brody's gone, they say, oh, he found one of the suits we keep in the floorboard. And when William Hurt tells Bryce Dallas Howard about this whole thing so that she can go in the woods and get medicines for Joaquin Phoenix, he's sort of explaining that, that they make all this up. They have speakers or something in the woods to make those noises. They're the ones who hurt those animals, but I think that might have been just one guy.
Yeah, the hurting of the animals also seemed a bit like I still couldn't quite figure out. It was hard to me to look back and see all the pieces, put them together and say, oh, yeah, that's how it all worked. It didn't have that sensation.
Let me ask, how many chunks of viewing did you watch this movie in?
I don't know. Not that many, though.
Was it more than 3?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I have a feeling.
Did I get jumbled up? Is that my
feel
problem?
like maybe
I
if
got
you would
jumbled
have
up.
sat down in one viewing and watched this, then you would have...
But I saw the scenes you're talking about. Anyway, here's another big problem I have with it.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you send the blind girl through the woods to get it? Even if you know there's no bad guy in the woods. Would you really think that that's a good idea?
She's very self-sufficient.
I know, but through the
also,
woods?
if she goes and she comes back, then maybe your secret is still safe. Maybe she doesn't see everything.
That's true.
I just love the conflict of how much are we willing to risk to save somebody's life.
Yeah.
And I think that this movie is great because it rides the line between folk horror, between mystery, between just a totally straight-faced human drama about trauma and coping.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that all of those disparate parts work well on their own and come together to create this kind of cool, weird, singular thing, especially with the look of it, with Roger Deakins' cinematography. I love the coloring, the bad color. We don't see any red in the movie. Anytime that we do, people bury it, or then you see the smear of red on the doors, and it's kind of a shocking image all of a sudden to see bright red in a movie that was so sort of devoid of that kind of bright primary color up until then.
The color felt mostly like a gimmick also to me. I mean, there's a lot of things that are... I mean, I guess that's sort of the point, is that they're using all these things to create an illusion.
I just love the world of the movie. I kind of love the mystery of it, and I don't think that it's perfect. Mm-hmm. And the Adrian Brody stuff, I think, is kind of legit weak.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you don't like this...
I don't like any movie. Now, the fact that they were... I mean, the fact that they were... So the big twist you're saying is that it's not in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
This is not a period piece, and the monsters are not real.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole time they set up this pretty believable, I think, fear early on, where you would have kids standing by the tree line at the border between the village and the woods, because there's kind of this truce. We don't bother them, the creatures don't come in here, and they would stand there to see who's the bravest, who can stand here the longest, because the fear is so palpable, it's so real that these supernatural creatures are in the woods, and we just kind of get these glimpses of them. They have kind of porcupine spines through their kind of capes. They wear hood capes, sort of
cool costumes.
Their faces sort of look like a hog of some kind, I guess. I think they look really cool, and I believe that they exist during the stretch of the movie that wants me to believe that they exist.
I would buy an action figure of one of those.
Yeah, maybe I should be that for Halloween.
Yes.
Be expensive, though.
You should.
I'm not going to do it. Did you give your golden take?
I didn't even give my question yet.
Oh, okay.
My question is Roger Ebert wrong about this movie? He gave the movie 1 star.
Mm-hmm. He's wrong.
He said it's a colossal miscalculation, a movie based on a premise that cannot support it, a premise so transparent it would be laughable were the movie not so deadly solemn. To call the ending an anticlimax, I'm not going to read the whole thing. He said it's basically a terrible movie. It's on his most hated 10th worst film.
And he's saying that the twist is transparent?
A premise so transparent. To me, when you realize it's in the present day, like that didn't even register to me as like, oh, that's supposed to be a big surprise. Because you know that they are purposely secluding themselves in a little city.
Yes.
So the fact that it was in a present day, first of all, why did they all wear period clothing? I don't get that. Why not just wear jeans? It's 2004.
That thought did cross my mind also, but I think that it's because the whole point is to be self-sufficient and not bring in things from the outside world.
But are we telling our children, like, okay, we're going to talk like this now, guys. We're going to wear this old kind of clothes. I don't understand why that would even be necessary.
The talking, the way that they speak I had a problem with that much more than the clothing, because I do feel like there's something in, we're going to make our clothes now. This is the way that we don't have denim on hand. So this is the way clothes look. But to change the way that we speak just because we're living in the woods, the little kids are not going to know the difference.
No.
So yeah, I could see that as a problem, but
I think that the thought experiment of the movie is bold, and that M. Night Shyamalan probably, it would have been helpful to have a couple more collaborators on the script.
I think it's always kind of helpful to have more collaborators, whenever and especially at this point, he's got a lot of freedom because he's made a lot of people a lot of money. So
I think he had a little too much freedom.
But here's my retort.
Cool ideas.
To Roger Ebert, because it kind of goes into my golden take here. I feel like at this point, people were getting more and more fed up with M. Night Shyamalan, because they loved him so much, and whenever we love something, we have to eventually tear it down. And I'm not saying that he was making perfect movies that people were just, raging against for no reason, but Sixth Sense, massive. Unbreakable was a disappointment as far as box office goes. I think it's close to just as good as The Sixth Sense.
Even better.
But the Signs starts having some problems. And it does that thing at the end where it kind of has a reveal that is sort of unnecessary, and then this one comes out. And I think that it's sort of the movie that cemented his legacy as like that twist guy.
Yep.
But I don't think that it's fair, because Unbreakable has a reveal. But it's kind of established the whole movie who Sam Jackson is. I don't think that your mind is not supposed to be blown at the end of that movie. Do you agree?
The fact that he was a villain.
But he's the complete opposite of Bruce Willis the whole movie long. Yeah. So I feel like that writing is on the wall. Then you have Signs. Have you seen that?
It's been a long time. But
there's sort of a reveal with water. His daughter leaves glasses of water all over the house, and then you realize, oh, the aliens are afraid of water, and that's kind of their weakness. I would say the ending of that movie is pretty weak, too. I don't really like the twist, but the whole rest of it, he's great at setting up the mood. There's a lot of good family stuff in there. But then this one comes along, has not just one twist, but like 3 of them. And I think that people just threw their hands in the air, and they were like, screw this movie. I'm tired of this guy.
Forget M. Night.
Yeah, he's done. He's done. And I kind of feel like Ebert's review is that sort of reaction. I think if this movie was made by someone not named M. Night Shyamalan...
Or if this were the first movie he made.
Yes, he would not have 1-starred it and put it on one of his 10th worst. That's a statement, and I think that he's setting a position for himself as...
So when I ask, is Roger Ebert ever wrong, you're saying yes. Is that what you're saying?
He's wrong here. Okay. There's a lot to like about this movie.
I think this is a movie that someone should remake in 10 years and fix some of the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
And Bryce Dallas Howard could play Sigourney Weaver's role.
That could be interesting. I'll go so far as to say this movie's better than all of the movies that Shyamalan's making now in his sort of resurgent period with The Visit and Glass and Split. I like this better than all those.
Have you seen Old?
No, but it's top of my Netflix queue.
Is it? Wow. Nice.
Oh,
yeah. Golden Take. Did you give a Golden Take?
That was my golden take. On twists.
Oh, I didn't even notice. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
this movie has a 43% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that needs to go up. That's an unfair rating.
We'll notch it up to 44 just for you, Mike.
70.
My golden take is that it's a bad idea to send a blind person through the woods to save someone's life. But my real goal, that's sort of silver. Maybe bronze.
Yeah, bronze.
My real golden take is this, that although Bryce Dallas Howard is very good, William Hurt, I think, is the moment when I felt the most emotionally involved in it. And I loved this line the most. When he's the one who's being the most brave in the movie, really, in that community to break all the spells, basically. He's willing to throw it all away to help save the person, just like you're mentioning earlier. Yep. And the fact that he says that his daughter, Ivy, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, is more capable than most in this village. Which you kind of think, I think maybe he's actually right about that. She is led by love, which feels a little trite, but I also thought, you know what? There's this kind of magic of the movie setup that you almost think maybe love is like actually a fairy tale, putting like red capes out there in the woods. You know, you kind of
yellow capes. That's the safe color,
right? But the bad color, red.
Yeah,
he's sort of like the Red Riding Hood meets the wolf, you know, in one. But she's led by love. Like, does he really believe that? You almost think maybe he believes that. Like, he has faith that love would be leading her. And then he says, the world moves for love. It kneels before it in awe. I thought that was a great line.
That's Shyamalan trying to win an Oscar.
I thought that was a great line. Maybe it was, but I totally bought that. And I thought that scene kind of like stole the show, gave it the sort of societal heart that it needs, as opposed to just like scary. Is this girl going to make it through the woods? Yeah. You know, and is she going to get eaten or something like that?
I think that is the core strength of this movie, because just throwing the whole thing away and cheapening it by saying that it's another one of these twist movies, that's basically assuming that the movie doesn't work once you know what's going to happen. Yeah. You know, just like at the end of Sixth Sense, if we know what's really going on, then why bother watching it again? Which I don't think is true at all. And I don't think it's true here either, because at the end of the day, this is a human drama that pretends to be a creature feature, that pretends to be a folk horror, but really it's about its characters, and that makes it rewatchable.
That's a golden take, Mike.
That is a golden take. So we're not going to do Keep It or Kick It this week.
Re-rank them.
But we are going to rank these and then say, do any of them have a real shot to make your top five? Why don't you go first?
My 1, 2, 3 is...
Wait, bottom up or do you go top down?
I'm going to go... My favorite out of these three was Open Water.
Okay.
I feel like that gave me the most visceral kind of reaction to it. On my notes here, I have Saw, then The Village.
But I talked you out of it.
But I'm sort of swapping them on the fly. If I'm able to do that,
I think sure. If you're going to swap them toward my direction, then yes, I'll allow it.
I think that Roger Deakins adds something so great to the movie.
He really does.
If I were going to pick one to rewatch, it would certainly be The Village over Saw, no doubt. And if I had to rewatch, what am I most interested actually in kind of refiguring out and seeing again? It might be The Village, but I still think that Saw or the Open Water made me feel the most immediately. So The Village for its slickness and its attempts, I'll put that second over Saw. Saw third.
I am going number 3, Saw. Number 2, Open Water. Number 1, The Village. I think that maybe that you're right, that Open Water is the most visceral, but it also is just kind of a one-trick pony.
It is.
You know, it's about...
Very simple.
Yes, it's about its tension, and that tension builds... and it kind of just keeps hitting that note, like you're scared. Look, check out the sharks for a second, and all that stuff is very good. But when I think about The Village, I love the cinematography just on its own.
Mm-hmm.
I think it looks great. I think the fact that I really do think that Shyamalan was like, this is going to be my masterpiece. I think that he had very, very high ambitions. You can see it sometimes in the script. You can see it in the long takes. He has that one scene with Joaquin Phoenix and Bryce Dallas Howard sitting on the porch, and it's a close-up. Mm-hmm. Both of their profiles just staring at each other, basically admitting like, okay, we love each other. We're going to do this.
That was well done.
And it's the scene right before we switch protagonists, and all of a sudden Joaquin Phoenix is taken out of the picture for the rest of the movie, which is another great little narrative turn.
It's a bold shift to make it really clearly like, this is Act 1, this is Act 2. We're not, and I didn't ever feel like, what happened to Joaquin Phoenix? I was watching it for him. I never felt that way, even though he was good in the movie. So yeah, those shifts I thought were also well done.
Yeah. Maybe especially in horror over other, and The Village is, on the borderline for sure, but over other genres, I'm willing to forgive problems if I think that it's in service of something bigger. And I think that what works here works really well. And the problems that I have, I don't really have a problem saying not a big deal. I don't like Adrian Brody. Okay, he's on screen for like a total of 6 minutes in the movie. Get him off.
Is The Village a strong contender for being in your top 5 this year?
I will say that this year has a lot of good movies. And I've rewatched a lot that I've seen in 2004 recently that I was thrilled about. So it's going to be a tough 5, but it'll compete. I think it and Open Water will be competing toward the end of the top 5. Definitely both will be in my 10.
Very good. I don't think these are going to compete very strongly for my top 5, but I did enjoy them all in different ways. So,
so next episode, we're going to talk about a movie that maybe will compete for your top 5.
That's
Sideways.
what I was expecting. So I hope you were going to pull a fast one. Yeah, Sideways. Paul Giamatti, Thomas Hayden Church. Sandra Oh, directed by Alexander Payne, and written and produced and everything by Alexander Payne. Nominated for Best Picture in 2004. I will tell you that this one is definitely a contender for top 5 for me. I have watched it already. Have you?
Probably haven't seen it in a decade.
You haven't rewatched it?
Nope, not recently. But
this one I got from Netflix. It was cracked in half, sent it back. Got another one. It was cracked in half, sent it back. Third one.
Some people would say
perfect.
That's why we should get rid of the Netflix DVD service. And to them, I say, no. I will go down with the ship with Netflix DVDs. But we want to hear from you. Let us know which of these 3 movies is your favorite, or what is your favorite horror movie of 2004. We're at bestpicturethis.com on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or by telling your smart speaker to play Best Picture This. We're also on Facebook and Twitter at Best Picture This. And for 15 years of golden takes, head over to Letterboxd, where you'll find me, Mike Cavalieri.
To support the show and help select a movie for a bonus episode, visit patreon.com/bestpicturethis.
Thanks to WNZF and Mark Gilliland for producing. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts.
To conclude, if you want to get out of this episode, you will not have to cut off your foot. I promise. We would never do something like that to you.
Cut off an ear?
No.
Cut off something? Maybe a finger?